I'm going to show you how to turn this roadkill deer into a delicious meal. The other night, I got a phone call about 10:30 at night. One of my buddies, someone hit a deer just right over here. And he asked me if I wanted it. I said, well, yeah, I want it. So I went and picked it up. I spent, I don't know, about 30 minutes. It took me to go get it, bring it back, and get the meat off of it that I could. But we got quite a bit of meat here. And I'm going to can some of this up. And you stick around to the end, and I'm going to show you one of the favorite meals that we make with it. All that you're going to do, and you can see I've got a pan of deer here, and I've got 7 pints of deer meat. And this is what we call a raw pack. This is a raw packing. So basically just means that we're canning it raw, that we're not cooking it beforehand. We got these cubed up in about 1-inch cubes, give or take. The fat and all of the sinews, all that stuff cut off of it. And so you want this to be really lean meat. And always use canning salt, always. Don't use table salt when you're canning. I've got this hot soapy water here. Sanitize it first, and you can add a couple of drops of bleach in it if you want. But hot soapy water, that's scalding. I can't put my hand down in it. And you want to sanitize your lids, rings, and jars. You want to keep your meat as cold as possible before you pack this, okay? Now what we're going to be using is a Presto pressure canner here in our little country kitchen. You can see I've got all kinds of stuff. There's my coffee. This is my jar remover, my salt and pepper, and this was some bacon grease that we didn't want to throw out. It's still sitting there. Used for some eggs. I like this. A lot of people have those fancy things. I've been using this for years. One of these days, maybe I'll upgrade, but for now I haven't. They all come with some type of a manual that explains to you how to use pressure cookers, what to do. And I was surprised to find this because it's the same recipe that my grandma and aunts used. My grandma's been gone for several years, and my aunts still use it. But it says here, pressure canning meat, and then it goes through all of the instructions on how to do it, whether you raw pack it or hot pack it. Now, you can pre-cook this meat. If you pre-cook, basically, instead of just packing it raw like this, where it's just the meat, and I'll go through there and try to get as much air out of this as I can. Sometimes it's hard with this meat. But basically, you would cook the meat, and then you would top it off with like some type of, I mean, you could use water, but a lot of people use beef broth or something like that to put over the top of it. I'm going to get some salt put in these jars. We're going to wipe these rims off real good, and we're going to get this process started, and I'll explain a little bit more about it as we go. All right, so we're just adding, I'm going to go ahead and add a teaspoon to these jars. A lot of times I just do that half teaspoon, and it works fine. I don't know that it's really going to make that much difference. If you added a lot of salt, of course, it probably would be salty. This doesn't make a huge difference. But since my grandma always used salt, I use salt. So there's a reason they did it. Now, we've forgotten a lot of things. I mean, it's pretty bad that we've forgotten so much stuff and how to do so many things and being self-sufficient and stuff. You know, we're so addicted to grocery stores and fast food. At least 80% of the meat that we eat is deer, comes from the wild, or it's fish or wild hog or something that we kill. And we actually are some of the only profitable hunters that I know, besides just a few of my friends. If I figured it up, and the average deer for us is worth about $150, I think is what I figured it at. $150 per deer on average. You know, some deer are bigger than others. It averages about $150 a deer for the amount of meat that we get out of this. Now, you take that into consideration. You know, I subtract the cost of my license and the little bit of stuff that we feed and different things like that to determine if, you know, if it's worth it, which, you know, you have things that you do that you enjoy and that traditions you carry on. But for me, you know, it's about feeding my family. If I can save that money and put it back rather than spend it on junk meat from the store, then I will. You know, this is as pure meat as you can get. And I think we ended up this year so far with 6 plus this. Now this is going to be 14 meals that my family is gonna, and all it took is me to run down here by the road. I ain't too proud. I promise you, I'm redneck. If that deer just got hit and it ain't been laying there very long. I mean, this thing was still warm. It was almost still kicking by the time I could get down there. I'm not too proud. I mean, we're gonna eat it. Why let it go to waste, right? Now, when you put these lids and rings on here, make sure they're good and clean. Check the gaskets on the lids. And finger tight. That's all you want, finger tight. Don't monkey fist this thing down. You want finger tight. I've got these transferred over to the canner here. Now, someone's going to tell me you should use a canning rack, right? Well, I've got one, and these things just don't fit in there good. But the main thing that you want to do is make sure your jars aren't touching, all right? So I just make sure I've got equal space, adequate space between all the jars. So we got our lid here, and you want to make sure you check your gasket for damages and stuff. And so basically all that we're going to do is put our lid on here, and we'll lock it down, all right? And we're going to turn some heat on it. We're going to get the heat going. It's going to take a little while because it's got to heat all of that stuff up in order to start building pressure. Now, you want to make sure that this is clear, all right? So always make sure this vent is clear here. And now you need to check your elevation and everything to see how much weight you need, but basically, we got 10 pounds of weight. That's 5. You add 1 ring, that's 10. Once this gets up to where it's putting off a steady steam, then we'll put this on. All right, we'll put that on, and that's basically going to be what the old timers called your rocker, your weight, your rocker. So basically, it's going to start rocking after a little while. Then we'll adjust our heat so that it's just barely a little wiggle. All right, we'll be able to hear it because it's the old style. We'll be able to hear it. And if the sound changes, then we can adjust our heat throughout the process. And we're just going to run for 75 minutes. If we were doing quarts, they'd be 90 minutes. Now, somebody out there is going to tell me that you don't need a pressure canner to cook meat. And I'm not even responding to those comments. I just won't. I know that people water bath meat. It is unsafe. I don't care what they say. They've never gotten sick, There's a reason why we're using pressure canners nowadays. Pressure canners are a lot older than what you think they are. They become publicly, I think they got out to the public in the early 1900s. I mean, these things have been around for a while. And they did it because people were getting sick of botulism. Now, botulism is the bacteria that basically will kill you if you don't get treatment for it quickly. And it's done because of improper canning methods. So I'm just telling you, if you pressure can your meat according to the instructions, it will be safe and it'll last 4 or 5 years. It only takes 75 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes to pressure can pints. If you water bath, it's 3 hours of water bathing something, 3 hours that you're going to have to sit there and water bath something that even if it seals and it's done properly, lasts for a maximum of about 2 years. So for a little bit of investment in a pressure cooker, you have safer meat that lasts twice as long that you don't have to worry about getting sick from. Don't water bath meat. That's my opinion. That's all I'm going to say about it. If you have a comment about it, you can leave it. I won't even respond to it. I will go on, so don't be offended, because I've had this argument with a lot of people here in Arkansas that refuse to listen to common logic. If my grandmother, who could not afford much, now she had 11 kids, she couldn't afford a lot. If my grandmother and grandfather had decided that it was worth the amount of time saved and the safety involved to pressure can it, then I'm going to go with her. They didn't throw money around for no reason. So there was a reason that she went to it, and if she was still alive today, I'd ask her. And I guarantee you she would tell you it's not safe, it's meat. So a lot of things need to be pressure canned. Always pressure cook meat, people. You can do chicken, you can do elk, you can do pretty much any meat. If you have a really, really gamey meat, you do want to soak it in a salt water in the refrigerator. Keep it as cold as possible for probably a couple of days to draw some of the blood out. The gaminess in meat is typically in the blood. Get the blood out. Then you can do this and it'll be fine. Meat, salt, jars, lids, pressure cook according to instructions. Okay, so we got a steady flow of steam there. You can hear it starting to boil. 10 pounds of weight on there. All right, so you can see that our pressure's up. So this will pop up when your pressure builds, and this will start rocking. What I'm gonna do is adjust my heat so that I get just a really slow rock. Just a little more than what I want, but we're not too far off. So when this is done, we'll have to let it completely cool off. Do not open these pressure cookers under pressure, and you'll know because this will drop down, and when that drops down, you can remove this. If you remove these weights before the pressure releases itself, then the jars can explode inside. If you open the lid before the pressure is off, then you'll probably be making a trip to the emergency room with scalds and everything else. So just follow the instructions for your canner. I'm going to show you how we make homemade deer stroganoff, and it is delicious. We got our can of deer meat. We got some flour and some butter, cream of mushroom soup, a cup to a cup and a quarter of sour cream, some beef broth, around a cup and a half of beef broth, some salt and pepper to taste, and our onion. And we got our garlic. So the first step is, because I'm not browning this meat, I'm gonna go ahead and add just a little pat of butter here. Let that melt down so that I can saute my onions. We're gonna put about a teaspoon of garlic in there. You can use a clove of garlic. I'm gonna use this minced garlic, so maybe just a little under a teaspoon. We still got our meat cooking, and since everyone's getting hungry, I'm gonna go ahead and start this since we do have some from last year. I'm gonna get this butter melted here in this cast iron skillet. Get our onions in here. About 3/4 of a teaspoon of garlic. Now you can see there we've got a real gentle shake on that thing, and that's what we want. We want to maintain that for the hour and 15 minutes. We got our onion sauteing here. We're gonna cook these up with the garlic. Add that meat here in a second. While that's going on, we've got some water heating up here for some egg noodles. Now we like the wide egg noodles, and it just depends on how many people you're feeding. I'll probably use half of this bag of noodles. This is what came off of the meat. Now this is just what was left of tissue, sinew, stuff like that, what little bit of fat was on the meat. So we'll scoop that little bit of stuff off, and then we'll drain the majority of this liquid off so that we can put it into our onion mixture. All right, so we got this about where we want it. My lighting's not the best, but you can kind of see we're getting a little bit of brown edges on it. Don't burn your garlic. Your garlic can scorch. So we've got our deer meat, and we left just that little bit of liquid in the bottom. And that's going to just kind of help it out a little bit. We're just going to shake that in there. Now look at that. Look at that delicious meat. So we're going to stir that in. Folks, I'm telling you, you got to try this canned venison. And then once that heats up good, we'll pull it out of here, put it in this bowl, and then go on to the next step. Okay, we got that mixture pulled out there. Let's see if we can get some light on it. The garlic and onions in the meat. And you can do this with ground meat too. So if you got burger and you just want to scramble up some burger and make some stroganoff, but it won't be this good. 3 tablespoons of butter. We're just going to use this same pan. It's all right. Everything's going to go back in it in a minute. We're going to melt down these 3 tablespoons of salted butter. So we got our flour stuck in here. This is not an exact measurement. I'm guessing somewhere around 3. I think the recipe calls for 3. And I might have to add just a tad bit more butter. Got a little bit more butter in it. Basically what we're doing is just trying to brown this flour up good. It's going to be our thickening agent. So we got this butter in there. And we're just going to keep it stirred. And you can see as you flip it that it's cooking. So just keep it stirred. All right, so we got that. Now I'm going to see if I can do this. Hold this camera and do this. I don't have it on the tripod. So we got our beef broth. We'll add our beef broth in there. And we're gonna stir to break up any clumps. All right. Well, I wish that color would show up with my lighting here. It looks yellow on the camera, but it's actually a light brown color. There. We just want to stir it 2 or 3 minutes. Once we've done that, we're going to add our can of cream of mushroom soup and our sour cream to it. And we'll get the rest of that out of there. Okay, so we got that stirred up. And it's really a creamy mixture here. It's really good. We're gonna add our meat back once we get that stirred in. Our meat, our onions, our garlic. Get all that added back in. And we're just gonna get that all stirred back in, or whatever technical term you wanna use, folded, mixed, whatever. All right, so we got our egg noodles drained. Now just do a quick dump and then right back in so it leaves a little moisture in it. And then we're gonna pour all of this in here and stir it up. And let me tell you, this is a delicious, delicious meal. The kids love it, Christy loves it. Get this stirred up. We got us some good old garlic bread to go with it. We'll put a little bit in a bowl here, a little bit of salt and pepper on top, a couple of pieces of garlic bread, something to drink. Connor getting him a bowl of it. It's pretty good stuff, ain't it, Connor?
Yeah.
Oh, he's getting 2 big old help. He's a growing boy. For all you that said he needed his haircut, he still hadn't got it. He still hadn't got it. The girls didn't want to be on video. Of course, Zoe took a picture, but
it won't. It's been too icy for me to go get a haircut.
Oh yeah, it has been icy. Well.
They went down the road.
Did they?
Yeah.
Stop.
There's Maddie Lou. I hadn't seen her since we were catfishing.
She's been emo in her room.
She's been in
She
emo.
doesn't leave her room. Yes, I do.
There's Zoe talking smack.
Y'all are in trouble.
Y'all really do me. Yeah, you better.
All right, it's getting a little hectic in here. All right, so I'm gonna turn the timer off. We're gonna pick this up real easily. It's gonna be a little heavy, and we're gonna set it off the heat. Do not slide it. Be very careful with it. All right, so I got it off the heat. As soon as I moved it off the heat, it basically stopped rocking. I can hear the water in there boiling just a little bit, and we're gonna wait on this pressure tab by itself to release pressure enough that we can take that off, and then we'll let it cool. Once it's completely cool, then we'll open it, but not until then. You can see the pressure is released off of it, so we're going to remove this weight, and then we're going to let it finish cooling down. Then once it's completely cool, we'll remove the lid. All right, we got them pulled out. So one other thing I might add, make sure to use quality lids and rings. All right, so that's what we got. I'll put the recipe in the description. If you want to make it, it's worth the time. Like I said, you can use beef. You don't have to use deer. I just suggest you use deer. Talk to you later.